Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this Rate and Quality Advisory Panel meeting. We will begin the meeting shortly, but first we would like to provide some information about translation. My name is Krista Murphy, and I will be introducing the interpretation feature. In order to provide language access, this meeting will have simultaneous bidirectional interpretation from English to Spanish and from English to Mandarin. We are asking that everyone joining us for this event, please select your preferred language to facilitate hearing presenters and participants clearly and to prevent technical glitches or interference occurring between the three language channels if one is not selected. If you're on your laptop, you will locate the icon shaped like a globe at the bottom of your screen. Click on language interpretation and then select the language of your choice, including English if your preferred language is English. If you're on an iPad, phone, or similar device, locate the three-dot menu up in the right corner of your screen, then click on language interpretation and select your preferred language. Please note that the translation globe option will not appear until after we have shared these instructions in Spanish and Mandarin. A reminder to all of us today, when you speak, please do so at a moderate pace because our interpreters are going to be simultaneously interpreting everything you say. I will now invite our Spanish interpreter to share these directions.
Buenos días a todos y bienvenidos a esta reunión. Yelga Vargas y yo, Giovanna Wormsbecker, seremos sus intérpretes en español. Esta reunión contará con interpretación simultánea bidireccional en inglés y en español y en mandarín. El globo de traducción no va a aparecer hasta que yo haya leído las instrucciones en inglés, en español y en mandarín. Por lo tanto, pedimos que todos los presentes seleccionen su idioma preferido para facilitar escuchar a los presentadores y participantes con claridad, evitando que produzcan fallas técnicas o interferencias entre los tres canales cuando uno de ellos no sea seleccionado. Si está usando una computadora, verá un icono en la parte inferior de la pantalla a la derecha en forma de globo que dice interpretación. Haga clic ahí y seleccione español. Si está utilizando un iPad o teléfono, localice el menú de 3 puntos que aparece arriba a la derecha. Haga clic en interpretación de idiomas y luego elija español. Cuando sea su turno de hablar, por favor recuerde hablar con voz fuerte y clara y a un paso moderado, ya que la intérprete estará interpretando simultáneamente al otro idioma. Now I will turn things over to our Mandarin interpreter. Thank you.
大家早上好，欢迎参加今天的小组会议。我的名字是亚楠，我是今天的普通话翻译，和 Sarah 一起提供翻译。为了提供语言的服务，今天的会议我们会从英语翻译为西班牙语和普通话的双向同声传译。请你们注意，在我们读完所有英文、西班牙文和中文的说明之后，你们才会看到翻译频道的地球图案。为了避免有人为选择语言频道而导致技术性的故障或回音的干扰，我们要求参加会议的每一个人都请从3种语言当中选择您想倾听的语言，才能够清楚地听到发言者还有与会者的声音。如果您使用的是台式桌面或笔记本电脑，等一下在屏幕底下您会看到一个地球形状的图标，点击它之后就是开启语言翻译的功能，之后您可以选择英语或是普通话，就是 Mandarin 的频道。如果您使用的是 iPad 手机和类似的平板设备，在屏幕右上角您会看到一个3点的图标，点击之后开启语言翻译频道的功能，您可以选择英语或者是普通话，就是 Mandarin 的频道。请你们注意，等一下我们读完所有指示之后，您才会看到翻译频道的地球图案。如果要听英文频道，也请您要选择英语的频道。如果今天有机会让您发言时候，请您要放慢速度，让口译员能够同步翻译您所说的所有内容。谢谢。Next slide, please.
Thank you so much. We will now be activating language interpretation, so please do take a moment to select the globe and select your preferred language. We are now ready to start the meeting.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our sixth meeting of the Rate and Quality Advisory Panel. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. I want to take a brief moment to share a few developments this morning. At our last meeting on March 13th of 2024, Prenatal to 5 Fiscal Strategies presented further center-based data. They discussed few differences seen in the data between centers participating in voucher Title 22 and direct contracts Title 5 programs. They also presented a summary of major themes regarding centers across the eight ad hoc group sessions. We provided an update also on the state alternative methodology timeline and shared that the state and the Child Care Provider United CCPU, through a Joint Labor Management Committee, JLMC, reached an agreement regarding the definitions of the elements of the base rate and enhancement rates to inform the state's single rate structure and rate setting. At the time of our meeting, the documents related to the JLMC agreement were still not finalized. Following the JLMC agreement, CDSS submitted a legislative report to the Senate Health and Human Services Budget Subcommittee, Assembly and State Education Budget Subcommittee, and the Legislative Analyst Office. The legislative report offers information on the progress that we've made to conduct an alternative methodology and the estimated model as required by SB 140. I'm pleased to share that both of the reports and the documents related to the JLMC agreement are now available on the CDSS Rate Reform and Quality website. And we will post a link to the website in the chat for you to have access. Now let's go to the next slide where I'm going to cover the agenda for today. So here's the agenda for today. And after my introductory remarks, we will move into the meatiest topic of the day, which is a presentation of the Joint Labor Management Committee definitions of the base and enhancement rate elements, followed by the time of discussion and public comment. Today, we will focus on the definitions for family, friend, and neighbor workforce, licensed family childcare homes, and licensed family childcare homes that participate in a family childcare home educational network, which you've heard us refer to as FECHNs. At the May 9th meeting, we will focus on the centers, but for today, the focus is on family childcare home providers. After the presentation, we will revisit the alternative methodology timeline to discuss what will happen between now and July 1st of 2024. Our first agenda item is a brief update on the next steps for Rate and Quality Advisory Panel meeting. So let's jump to our next slide. Okay, so in a moment, we will move to our second and main agenda item. Before doing this, to address questions that people have asked about the role and the purpose of the feedback, I want to briefly revisit the role of the Rate and Quality Advisory Panel. I want to continue to express our appreciation for the panel also. California legislation enacted in 2021 required the state and CCPU to establish a Joint Labor Management Committee to make recommendations to the Department of Finance for a single reimbursement rate structure that address quality standards for equity and accessibility while supporting positive learning and developmental outcomes for children. It is also required for CDSS to convene a work group to assess and make recommendations to the JLMC. The work group's August 2022 report, which recommended, amongst other things, that the state move to an alternative methodology, satisfies its legislative charge. Federal law requires that a state obtain pre-approval from the federal government of its proposed alternative methodology. CDSS described its an intent to create an advisory panel in its March 2023 request to pre-approval, and in July of 2023 followed-up letter to the ACF. In May of 2023, CDSS reconvened the Rate and Quality Work Group members and a Rate and Quality Advisory Panel, RQAP. The RQAP provides advice, input, and consultation to CDSS, in consultation also with CDE and P5 throughout the alternative methodology process. Unlike the Rate and Quality Work Group, it does not operate under the specific legislative mandate. The authority to establish a base and enhance rate definitions and set rates does not sit with the panel. However, discussions and public comment about these meetings are instrumental to help inform decision makers. The next agenda item is an opportunity for public engagement regarding the definitions of the base and enhancement rate element. So let's go to our next, thank you. So as a reminder, for those who are not familiar with the role of the JLMCs, the first labor agreement between the state and the Child Care Provider United CCPU union encouraged the use of the JLMC comprised of representatives from both parties to address issues of mutual concerns in a problem-solving context. So let's go to the next slide. Article 7.3, the successor agreement between the state and CCPU specifies the following. No later than February 15th of 2024, Rate and Quality System Structure Review of the Joint Labor Management Committee, using information from the cost estimation model, shall define the elements of the base rate and enhance rates to inform the state's proposed single rate structure and rates to be subject and to be mandated for public engagement of the state plan process. The JLMC met 16 times between December of 2023 and March 6 before arriving at general consensus on the definition of the base and the enhancement rate. Thank you. Perfect. So the components of the public engagement process are as follows. So first, materials and recordings from the meetings, as well as other materials relevant to the alternative methodology, such as CDSS approval request to ACF, and the timelines that I mentioned before will remain available on the Rate Reform and Quality website throughout the alternative methodology process. These materials include the following JLMC definition documents, and a joint cover letter from the state and CCPU is publicly posted on the CDSS Rate Reform and Quality website. The second is that we created a dedicated email address to which members of the public may send comments on the rate element definitions until May 23rd of 2024. The public may also use the to address any questions about the alternative methodology process. This address is on the side and will be posted in its in the chat, right? So it's single rate structure at dss.ca.gov. Okay, third, the public comment on the rate element definition will be taken at today's meetings and at the May 8th meeting of the Rate and Quality Advisory Panel. Today's meeting will focus on the JLMC rate element definitions for family childcare home providers. And in May, we will be taking feedback as to how those definitions may be adjusted or applied to the center-based programs. The department will also continue to collaborate with the Department of Education, which administrates the state preschool, as part of the engagement process. Over the next several slides, we will walk through the JLMC rate element definitions. So let's go to the next slide. So the draft state plan preprint defined the base as the following. the lowest foundational rate before any differentials are added for higher quality or other purposes, sufficient to ensure that minimum health and safety and staffing requirements are covered, and used to determine compliance with federal equal access requirement. The JLMC cover letter and definitions of the base and enhancement rates are posted on the rate reform and quality website, and we can post them in the chat too. So we're going to be posting the cover letter, and we'll be also posting the definitions of the elements of the base rates and enhancement rates. Okay, the JLMC base rate elements definitions are clustered into 5 groupings: program characteristics, compensation, professional development supports, quality variables, and non-personnel. Let's go to the next slide. So let me just make a side note that what my plan is to go through each of these one by one, right? So and so it's going to take us a little bit, and I apologize that I am speaking at you so long. I recognize that. I may take a pause in between a couple slides just to be able to have so I can drink water, as well as give everyone just that mental break. But as we get to the public comment or the panel, we're happy to go back to any slides, as we know it may be information overload. And hopefully with the links in the chat, that might also help you pull that up and be able to see these different elements too. So the first grouping consists of programs characteristics. We will start by reviewing the definitions on rates and group size. For Title 22 and Title 5 programs, the ratio and group size definitions corresponds to regulatory standards for small and large homes, as defined on the slide in the document. For license exempt, family-friendly neighbor providers, size of groups of which the model is run is a selection point, and that is a T to be determined, subject to bargaining. So let me pause a minute before we jump to the next slide, just so then everyone has a moment to just view this slide for a moment. Okay, perfect. Let's jump to the next slide. Okay, the next element consists of staffing patterns. So license exempt, family-friendly neighbor providers. So family-friendly neighbor providers / owners is the only staff member. So it's at an FTE of 40 hours per week. Title 22 licensed family childcare homes. The provider / owner is the only staff member unless the licensing regulation calls for an assistant, right? Such as a large licensed home with up to 14 children. The FTE is reflected at 40 hours per week. The model also includes supports for the provider and owner in the form of additional hours of assistant time each week, and that's to be determined. Title 5 license, family childcare homes. The provider / owner is the only staff member unless licensing regulations call for an assistant. Large licensed home with up to 14 children. FTE is 40 hours a week. And the model also includes support for the provider / owner in the form of additional hours of the assistant time each week. And that is TBD, to be determined. So let me pause for a minute before we jump to the next slide, just to have everyone take a note of this slide. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, the next grouping, we will provide consistent of compensation. Let's look at the elements of the salary, wage, and income. So license exempt, family, friend, and neighbor providers, it depends on the selection point. Model can be run using various combinations of the following source. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, which we reference as a BLS of 2023. A regional difference factor may be considered that varies by geographic region, or other source that informs cost to the salary, wage, income, and element specific to all the family childcare home providers may be explored. For Title 22, licensed family childcare home providers, it depends on the selection point. So model can be run using various combinations of following sources. It could be run by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS 2023. It can also be run by the MIT Living Wage Calculator for California 2023 with family compensation adjustments. Also hybrid BLS Plus, this approach that adjusts BLS upwards by a percentage that varies on geographic regions using the MIT Living Wage Calculator to inform the adjustments. We can also do a regional difference factors may be considered to various by geographic regions, and provide owners receive more on a salary ladder. So let me jump to the Title V licensed family childcare homes. Depends also on the selection point. The salary scale adjusted some percentage higher than Title 22 salaries, and that's to be determined. The model can be run using various combinations of sources, and I'm going to list the sources. So there's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS of 2023. It's the MIT Living Wage Calculator for California in 2023 with family compensation adjustment. The hybrid BLS Plus approach that adjusts BLS upward by a percentage that varies by geographic regions, using the MIT Living Wage Calculator to inform the adjustments. A regional difference factor may be considered that varies by geographic regions. And then provider owner receives more on the salary ladder. So let me pause again to make sure everyone is able to see this slide one more time. Okay, let me jump then to the next slide. Okay, here we will take a look at mandatory expenses related to staffing and discretionary benefits. So for mandatory expenses related to staffing, definitions for all these categories of the family childcare home providers consist of the FICA, Social Security at 6.2%, Medicare at 1.45%, unemployment insurance at 3%, and workers' compensation at 6%. We have the discretionary benefits, paid time off, and the definition. Paid time off for each staff member, and that's to be determined. And then we have discretionary benefits, health employer share. So definition, dollar amount per staff position, and that's also to be determined. So let me pause for a minute on this slide. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so now let's transition to professional development support. Here you'll find the definitions for the training and planning time. So for training, license exempt family, friend, and neighbor providers, hours annually to support health practices and trainings for providers/owners will to be determined. Title 22 license, family childcare home providers is 16 hours annually per staff. Health practices, pediatric CPR, and pediatric first aid training for all or any adults responsible for caring for children. So example is in a provider/owners owner's temporary absence, and childhood nutrition. That would account for the 16 hours annually. Title V license, family childcare homes, includes 16 plus additional based on requirement, hours annually per staff, health practices, pediatric, CPR, and pediatric first aid training for any or all adults responsible for caring for children, and childhood nutrition make up those 16 hours. Assume CCDF contractor requires additional training related to Title V regulatory requirement. So also want to underscore that too. And then in regards to planning time, the definition includes hours per week, which to be determined for license exempt and licensed family childcare homes. So let me pause for a minute before we head to our next slide. Okay, let's go to our next slide. Okay, next, we will look at the quality variables grouping, and particularly the definition for family engagement, child education and development, and child health inclusion supports, and dual language learner supports. So family engagement, license exempt family friend and neighbor providers, number of hours per child per year to support required or expected family engagement activities, similar to conferences or conferences equivalent, is to be determined. So Title 22 licensed family childcare homes, number of hours per child per year to support requirement and expected family engagement activities includes, but not limited to, conference/conference equivalent is also to be determined. And Title V licensed family childcare homes, number of hours per child per year to support required and expected family engagement activities, including but not limited to conferences/conference equivalent, is also to be determined. Child education and development. And so for license exempt family friend and neighbor providers, a flat amount per home annually. For Title 22 licensed family childcare homes, a flat amount per child annually plus a flat amount per homes. And then the Title V licensed family childcare home, a flat amount per child annually plus a flat amount per home. And then child health. So license exempt family friend and providers, it does not include Title 22 licensed family childcare homes, a flat amount per child annually, in addition to what is included in non-personnel. And then Title V licensed family childcare homes, a flat amount per child annually, in addition to what is included in non-personnel. So let me pause for a minute. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in this slide, we will cover the definitions for inclusion supports and dual language learner supports as quality variables. So inclusion supports, let's start with that. License exempt family, friend, and neighbor providers. None defined in the base rate element. For family, friend, and neighbor providers, that is defined as an enhancement rate element. Title 22 licensed family childcare homes. Equipment and special materials is a fixed amount per child per year. That's to be determined. Hours, fixed number of hours per week per child is also to be determined. and number of children to whom this applies is a selection point to be determined. So Title V license, family childcare homes, equipment and special material is a fixed amount per child and per year to be determined. Hours, which is a fixed amount of hours per week per child, is to be determined. And the number of children to whom this applies is a selection point to be determined. Okay, next is dual language learner support, license exempt, family friend and neighbor provider, dollar amount per child per year is to be determined. Title 22 licensed family childcare homes, dollar amount per child per year is also to be determined. And Title V licensed family childcare homes, dollar amount per child per year to be determined. Wage differential for owner/staff required to support dual language learners is to be determined too. So let me pause again. Okay, let's jump to the next slide on the non-personnel. So next, let's review the non-personnel groupings. The definition you will see here are for the base rate elements consisting of administration, occupancy, education program, and operating reserve. Administration/office, a definition consistent of a flat amount per child for license exempt and family childcare homes. Occupancies is a definition consistent of a flat amount per child for license exempt and family childcare homes. Education program is a definition of a flat amount per child for license exempt and family childcare homes. And then operating reserve. So none for the license exempt, family friend and neighbor, a percentage of total expense for the family childcare home provider. So we'll hang for a little bit here just to pause. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, so just some background in regards to the enhanced rate elements. So federal regs allows for enhanced rates on top of the base rates as a way to increase payment rates for providers serving children with special needs and as a way to incentivize or to cover costs for higher quality care. In its 2022 report, the Rate and Quality Work Group recommended that the state establish and fund the base rate before proceeding with supplemental rate level and or enhancement rates tied to the program quality or new requirements. It also recommended to retain the current weekend and evening rate enhancements. The 3 enhancement rate defined by the JLMC reflect 3 different kinds of additional expenses of addressing specific family needs. As many of you know, our current system includes adjustment factors, which are multipliers used to augment the reimbursement rate for providers who serve children that meet certain criteria specific in state statute. How enhancement rates under the single rate system will interact with the current rate adjustment rates is subject to more discussions. The next 3 slides will summarize the enhancement rate elements defined by the JLMC. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So for the license exempt and the family childcare home settings, adjustment factors should reflect the additional cost associated with being open for non-traditional hours and adequately incentivizing this care in homes and base settings where it's primarily offered. Further discussions, modeling, and research is necessary to see how this rate will be applied and how it will integrate with or replace current extended hour requirements. Background info for reference. So the current adjustment factor is applied for both Title 22 and Title 5 programs. When services are provided to a child during the period from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. on any day of the week, or from 6 a.m. Saturday to 6 a.m. on Monday, the contractor multiplies the applicable regional market rate ceiling by one of the following adjustment factors, right? So the first is the 1.25 when 50% or more of the certified need for childcare occurs during this period. And the second is the 1.125 when at least 10%, but less than 50% of the certified need for children occurs during this period of time. So just a little point of reference of how it operates now. So let me pause there and have this slide up just for a moment. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so again, the inclusion is a base rate element for licensed family childcare homes and for Title V Family Childcare Homes Educational Network FECHN providers. Inclusion is an additional enhancement rate element for all family childcare home providers. The model assumption supports this element are informed by input sessions, rate quality work group discussions, and the national data showing the need for improving funding for inclusion supports for home-based providers who are often the provider of choice and necessary for families with children with disabilities. The details of the document will be required to obtain what amount are matters for rate settings and implementations and has not yet been determined. Let me pause here. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this variable is meant to reflect year-round transportation services between schools and activities and children's homes and providers' facilities homes when necessary to support families at their discretion. Such expenses may include things such as business license, car seats, booster seats, and gas. So let me pause here for a bit. Okay, so let's go to the panel discussion. So with this segment, then a couple pieces. If I can have Wested go back to the gallery, because I do want to see everyone for this segment here. And again, as a reference, we do go over a lot of slides. So we are more than happy to be able to go back to a slide if someone wants to take another look. And so now we are in the panel discussion segment. This is an opportunity to share comment or feedback for the first segment on the timeline. We also have a second time for public comment after this segment, and we'd like to reserve the members of the public who do not have access to our panel discussions for us to be able to receive their feedback. So we're eager to hear from the panelists in regards to this current first section that includes both the timeline as well as the elements in regards to this. Before I turn it over to Krista to support with that, I also want to reference that you've noticed that there is some things that say TBD. That is where we are coming to you to continue to receive your feedback in regards to those areas. What we did want to make sure is to cover the elements so then everyone is aware of what is currently included in the model. So let me pause there and I will turn it over to Krista in regards to the raised hands.
Thank you, Dr. Milam. We have Donna first and then Eric and Robin. Donna, please unmute and go ahead.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for all of the work that went into putting this together. It was a lot of information, and I think it's difficult to go back to all the different questions I have, so I'm just going to do my top three. Maybe some of my other colleagues will pick up some of the other ones that I miss. I am a bit concerned about the heavy use of the Bureau of Labor Statistics number. We know the childcare market is a failed economic market, and basing it on current labor numbers bakes in that existing failure in the market. And I know that there's multiple criteria in that section, but I'm a little concerned how heavily BLS is relied upon. I think that really sets us up to continue to exacerbate the problem we have. The second thing I'm very concerned about is all of the one-time annual costs or adjustments. Kids don't stay with the same provider the whole year. I'm not sure how. I would hope that somehow that gets baked into whatever rate structure, but it makes me nervous from an administrative perspective, what kind of back and forth we're going to have if there are one-time allocations. And I would hope that whatever this is would be thought about is how it would be baked in ongoing. And doing once a year doesn't seem, I don't know how that would even work. You'd end up having to prorate things, and it's very confusing to me. And then my last comment would be that in the enhanced rate piece, I'm concerned that transportation is an enhancement. For school-age children, transportation is a regular part of care. And particularly with the expansion of transitional kindergarten and the additional work we're asking our provider community to take on, you know, half the kids in the subsidy voucher programs are school-age kids. And transportation is just part of the regular deal. So I'm concerned that that's seen as an enhancement and not part of the base. So I'll stop there and let other folks weigh in.
Thank you, Donna. And we are noting all your comments in regards to what you reference as your top three. And also note that there's plenty of opportunity to also submit comments via the chat, as well as after the meeting too, as I understand that we're still unpacking this together. Perfect. Turn it over to Krista for the next.
Eric Peterson, please unmute and go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'll try to enhance Donna's comments and keep it to three. How's that? Some technical stuff I saw in here around your 40-hour full-time rate. For all of us who support all of the providers that will be in the system, our old rate for full-time was 30 hours. Our new rate for full-time is 25 hours. This does not match. So I don't know what, just a comment. I'm not sure how to fix that or address it, but I just wanted to point it out. The second thing is you have the regional differences in compensation, which worries me a little bit because we're currently doing a county model. And so when you're determining those rates or the compensation, it's going to probably roll up to the amount that we're going to be paying to the providers. And I just want to make sure that there's a hold harmless in there for counties if you don't use a county model. The third thing I would say, and I think I've talked to Lupe about this before in another group about the exempt, how California is out of compliance with our exempt childcare providers. And in the state plan, there's at least like 50 places where we have TBD. And that's a lot. There's a lot of stuff to think about there. I would probably suggest to the state that they put together an exempt workforce or a work group to help you guys kind of, and Adam can't do it alone. Hack through all of that stuff. And the family engagement, all of that stuff, and the stuff that Donna was talking about the rates, the one-time rates. Those all are the rates, trainings, family engagement, inclusion. All of that stuff is expensive for providers to do because they have to take time away from the children. And so I would like you to keep that in mind. It's also going to be expensive for agencies to administer, because we're going to have to, I'm sure, figure out a way to have language support for all of those things, do monitoring, and I'm sure at some point reporting. And so that's some extra burden on the agencies administering those. So I'll stop there and thank you for the report. I'm glad we got to all see it.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you that you're already lifting up, just like Donna's implementation, right? So we're right now diving into the elements. However, as a follow-up conversation, we definitely need to continue to think about how does this implement on the ground, and of course, continuing to lift up the voices to help inform that too. So appreciate that too, and also noting your comments.
Thank you. We'll have Robin next, followed by Dr. Sanchez and then Brandy. Robin, please go ahead.
Thank you, Lupe. That was a lot, and I will apologize. I have more than 3, but I'll go fast. At the very beginning of your, it was in your intro and welcome, like first few sentences, I thought I heard something maybe about a survey that centers and family childcare were the same. So I'll go through all my questions and then we can maybe answer some of them. And then the first slide about compensation. What's confusing to me is when it says depends on the selection point. What does that mean, and how will this model be used? Same thing with quality variables. When it says per child, it's confusing. Flat amount, like the whole thing seems like a shopping list. And so right away, and I'm not an AP provider, I represent Title V, but right away I was like, how in the world are AP providers going to track all this shopping? It reminded me of a shopping list. Like, do the providers check a box? Because currently the AP providers don't go out and monitor the, the AP contractors don't go out and monitor the AP providers as far as I know. And so I'm just curious how compensation will be given to the AP contractors in order to support all of these enhancements. And then just if this is going to be a complete different situation, currently when we have adjustment rate factors, which we do, it's not more money into the pocket of the provider. That goes with both family childcare, AP providers, and center-based. What it actually does is it reduces the amount of children we serve. So those are my questions. I'm hoping we can discuss that, or do we have to wait? How are we gonna do this?
Yeah, so happy to dive into some of these here, and I'll also tag team with Gina on some of these, or sign into on some of these responses there. I am making a note on the survey, so as I'm speaking, if you see me kind of look away, it's because I want to look at my opening slide to kind of better say, what did I say about the survey?
It wasn't in the slides, it was your
Okay.
welcome. It was in your very, very beginning, before slides.
Perfect. And I might have to put a pause on that one as I go back and remind myself on that too. But let me jump on even what the elements itself, right? So what we have brought forward to the panel and our community of interest is the elements itself. And of the elements, with the breakdown, it had a couple pieces to it. One is that some elements, like you mentioned, like compensation, has a list of potential type of compensations that we are going to be looking at when we're doing rate setting. So at this point, the model is built to have these options for compensation: BLS, MIT, and then the few other ones that I had spoken to. And those are the type of feedback that that we hope to be able to continue to hear from this group and the public in regards to that when we get to the rate setting piece. But for now, we wanted to make sure that everyone knows the model is built with these options, and therefore we're still unpacking together these options itself. Let me pause and see if Gina wants to add anything else of what I've just opened up with.
Nope, you got it. Perfect.
Perfect. And so the second piece of this is in regards to the implementation. So what you reference in regards to how APP would support some of these pieces and et cetera, will be ongoing, and always happy to hear feedback too in regards to the implementation itself. So that's one thing to say, these are the elements, and this is what the model includes at this point, and we're going to refine. And the second piece of that is to continue to hear, and this is how it's going to look like on the ground, right? I think just lifting up what Eric said about the family, friend, and neighbor, thinking, I hear a suggestion about maybe there should be a dedicated group to talk about that implementation component and et cetera, right? So that's a separate conversation. Don't want to restrict today's conversation from not hearing that, because it's never too early to hear about the implementation of this work. However, there will be some dedicated space in regards to that too. In terms of adjustment factor, remember that we are building a single rate. So this is where we have to continue to think about what we have currently in place now is one piece, but also dare us to dream in regards to what a single rate could be when we're going back to implementation of these adjustment rates or the different elements of its point, right? So, so I think that goes back to, again, how we're able to have the application, and it goes hand in hand with more conversations about the implementation rate. But again, never too early to continue to weigh into those, as we want to make sure that we are keeping all those considerations going. And let me see if I have covered everything here. I need to go back to the piece in regards to the beginning with the survey, but let me, as I do that for a minute, let me pause and see if there's anything further, Robin, and then hopefully I can get to your first point about the survey.
Yeah, I think I'll wait and see what the other panelists have to say. I think
Okay,
it's just a lot, and let's just see what everybody else has to say. Thank you.
Sounds good. And then in terms of my opening statement, what I was really trying to convey more than anything was that when we're trying to highlight in the welcoming, was that the same way that we started with the family child care data, we also looked at the center data. Right. And so we're looking at the cost for the entire system. Today, we happen to be diving into the Joint Labor Management Committee, which represents the represented groups, but want to just make sure that everyone knows that that is not that is the focus for today. However, center-based focus will be in May, but always happy to hear any comments in general, though, in regards to the entire system.
Yeah, I thought I heard it was that they're the same type of program, but I must have heard.
No.
Okay, thank you.
And it could have been me too. I need to
It
sip
was
on my
probably
water.
me. Thank you.
So, I appreciate though you clarifying though, because I want to make sure that the as well as our panelists, but the public does not hear that. You know, if I had misspoken. So thank you for calling that. Krista, in regards to the next panelist.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Sanchez, please go ahead.
Todos, un gusto poder estar. Gracias, doctora, por la buena información que nos ha presentado este día. Se me vino a la mente,
Sorry, it's difficult to hear the speaker.
Dr. Sanchez, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We're having difficulty with your connection.
Tomaran en cuenta. Y una de ellas es cómo contabilizar el trabajo que
How
implica
to account the work that includes the child care. Can you hear me now?
Sí, mucho más mejor.
¿Sí?
Yes, better.
Ok. Sí, les decía de que no eran preguntas las que tenía, sino que era algo que yo estaba pensando
This is something that I was thinking while the presentation from Guadalupe. I wanted to know how can we look into the job that we do as providers, for example, the planification, transportation, preparation, the family's participation, and also how is the FN going to guarantee that everything is take into account the work that we're doing, because it's important that a center and also a provider with license. And the last is, how can you guarantee the salary of all the three categories that I just mentioned, that it's fair? Sorry, it's hard to understand the speaker. She's cutting off.
Lo que yo tenía, quería hacerlo ver a todo el panel y a toda la gente que está presente. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias por su comentario. So thank you for the comment. So here that we have to take into account just salaries across the entire system, right? So Dr. Sanchez referenced that too. And she also referenced in regards to how to take the accountability from the family, friend, and neighbor in regards to those type of areas such as planning, transportation, family participation, those kind of pieces that also land in a family friend and neighbor setting and is provided by that. So taking that into account is what she's asking us to continue to have discussions on. So muchas gracias por su comentario.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchez. We'll have Brandy up next, followed by Eric Sonnenfeld and then Deborah. Brandy, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So a couple things. One, I'd like to get back to at least one of the questions Donna answered that was not answered. If we're going to have this is our only bite at the apple to have a discussion. I really feel like we need to answer the questions that are being asked, particularly around the BLS. I know that these are choices, but I wanted to make sure that Donna got her answer for her question. The second thing I want to talk about as well is it would have been great since thank you, by the way, for sending these ahead to the panelists. I really appreciate that because it gave me a chance to review. And in reviewing, I wanted to I kept wondering, like, what's different here than what really is already in the elements of our rates. And so a side-by-side comparison of what has changed and what has moved forward based on the recommendations that we've all made multiple times has been something that's hard for me to tease out. These look very similar. And so I'm just curious about that, besides the benefit piece, which I guess goes to the FCC. So that's another thing I think I'd like to understand a little bit better, like what are the highlights of the changes or differences that you have put in here. And then thirdly, just basically a comment you mentioned earlier that, oh, thank you for the comment. That's important to remember when we go to implementation. Well, to do good policy, you have to understand how it's going to be impacted on the implementation level. And so we need to actually have those implementation discussions when we're making decisions about the model, or it will not work, right? And so I don't know necessarily that you were pushing that to another conversation or not, Dr. Lupe, but I do think that these implementation questions about, say, Donna's question about how do you do a one-time thing for an AP program that follows a child, I do wonder about how we discuss those in this moment of design. So Donna's questions, the difference between what is in this elements and not what's in these elements and what was in the rates before, and the importance of talking about the implementational challenges. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to see if I can dive into it. Please know that my answer will probably not be as comprehensive as I would like to, especially when it comes to the side-by-side comparison, since I don't have that immediately in front of me. I think what we can start off by saying is that as far as the side-by-side comparison is that we're moving to a single rate. That in itself is already a huge difference in regards to what we have currently in place right now, right? Which means if we talk about by side, every contract currently right now has their different types of elements applied. What we're moving towards with these framework of elements is that this is what's going to be the elements that we are considering for the what is the cost model currently includes. I think that's a big difference. Other thing that comes to mind as a side-by-side comparison is the transportation. Transportation has been is recognized at this point as an enhancement rate. And our current model, if, and again, take it by the type of contract it is, but I'm going to speak in general as an alternate payment provider. If the rate of the provider is less than the regional market rate cap, then a transportation could be considered. So that is another difference in regards to an element that is currently called out in the model itself. Pieces. There's quite a few elements in the model right now that we hope that the group continues to voice opinions in regards to what that looks like. Both in implementation, like you referenced, Brandy, we are also in agreement to you that we have to keep that in mind and we can't kick the can too much further. It is going to also always be in presence of these conversations. And so as others of the panelists have joined in and have referenced already implementations considerations, we want to continue to make sure that that is front and center. So don't disagree with your comment regarding the implementation discussions and an invitation to continue to lift that up, which I believe that the panelists are continuing to do that in itself. The question regarding, and I hope this is what the one that you will reference, as Donna's first statement about the one-time piece and how that is applied and in regards to whether it's a one-time or whether it's yearly, understanding that I think from just paraphrasing from what I heard from Donna, understanding that children come in at different times. There is, you know, a level of different children that may be enrolled at different times, and therefore is, and then also the concern about these type of pieces from an implementation level being able to be prorated, I think is also what Donna had referenced in her comment as a question more than answer. I think we're looking for you. We're looking for this group to tell us that type of information to say, this is, you know, like you're doing already, and continuing to add to that discussion in regards to what those elements and what we're calling out could have, could possibly be considerations and thoughts around that too. So I hope, let me pause, Brandy, and make sure that I have answered or spoke to the three comments that you lifted up.
Yes, you definitely addressed them. I'm just concerned with how much is on here and the times that we have been given to voice our feedback they're not balanced, right? There's just so much to try to dive into and roll up your sleeves and really get into. And I'm not sure how or when that's going to be able to happen. But I don't want to, in that point, I'm going to yield my time again move on to the next commenter, but I'm sure that there's a lot of things in the depths of this that, you know, we'd all like to go deep into, and I don't know that we have the time. I know we don't have the time, so that's a concern as well to me.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, we'll underscore, please use the chat as further feedback, and please follow up with more comments in writing to the mailbox that we have provided to. This is, and as you know, I also provide updates at the Early Childhood Policy Council as well as other spaces. So let's continue the conversation, because I do hear what you're saying in regards to that this is one meeting for such a big topic. So I definitely hear that.
Thank you. We will have Eric S. up next, followed by Deborah and then Jackie. And then we may reach our time limit at that time. So other panelists be thinking about what your questions might be to add to the chat. Eric, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and all the wonderful material that's been presented. I want to raise up the BLS once again. As we know, that data is kind of sticky. Specifically for BLS related to childcare, it's not its own code section under BLS statistics, so there's a lot of inference that's happening to those numbers. I would really like to see the difference between what BLS says and what maybe any of our P5 individual California survey data has said. Also against the living wage calculator, because BLS has problems with it. It's not a good snapshot. Maybe P5 can educate me a little bit better on that, but it's not as reliable as other sectors of the economy on wage labor data. There's just not enough there to be able to parse out some things. So I think there's a lot of assumptions that may have to be done there. Secondarily, it's going to the whole compliance of this thing. Once we approve whatever we're going to approve, how are we going to be accountable to CCDF to prove that we're doing all these things? How are we going to make sure that providers are adequately compensated for the things they actually are doing? How are we going to ask them to prove it or justify it? Because eventually this is all taxpayer funds. We have to be accountable somewhere, some way, somehow. Also, how does the recent changes to the CCDF's plan impact any of these things? Those were kind of thrown in as a monkey wrench in the middle of this process. Are there any implications there? And my primary concern, there's a lot of TBDs in this plan. And those TBDs are concerning because those are some major pieces that will inform either a dollar amount attached to them or not. And so that's of a concern. Again, how that would be from a compliance point of view, how from an administrative point of view, how from an equity point of view, those would be implemented. And lastly, looking at some of the cost model requirements, we have to make sure now that we have two departments administering potentially two different fetching. You've got the state preschool fetching and you've got the CCTR CFCC fetching potentially. And as those diverge, to make sure that we have the appropriate rates for whatever those two control agencies may be requesting as they slowly start to part ways with each other of the requirements. So that just keep that in mind as well moving forward. And thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for those comments.
All right, Deborah, I invite you to please unmute and go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. First, I just want to say is that according to the FFN work, that the state originally didn't want to put that in there. So I want everyone to know that. And to Donna's question by saying, I want to say that we also agree that salary needs to be higher than BLS and that the transportation is fundamental to all providers that we know. And we do need to implement and talk implementation as soon as possible. I also want to add and say, as I sit here listening and being a member of that JLMC with the state, I sit and I say that everyone here knows that when you're up with and working with the state, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Everything you may have on that paper, everything you desire, you are going back and forth fighting as hard as you can to get what you can for those in need. And we fought for providers We fought for the families we serve. And yeah, we're dealing with the state. And the state, you know how you work. So as we know, everyone here knows that the fight it took for us to get to this new, I love you, Tracy. Okay, I'll get it. Thank you, Mama. That the fight we did to get here along to this new methodology didn't happen overnight. And the stand that we as providers take up against the state, trying to make sure everything is fair and right, is real to the reality. I love you too, Mama. Is real to the reality that we live today. So please don't take this, and I'm not offended. I don't take it personal, but I do take the fight personal of what we're doing and what we're trying to implement. So know that the battle's not over, that we're still going through this, and that I know that it's going to be better than what it is now. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, don't take it personal, Deborah, because we fight hard for providers. I appreciate and I love the feedback. But let's see what that feedback you give us, when we present it, let's see what we get back from the state. I'm just going to keep it as real as I can, because this is truly how I feel. Thank you.
I love you.
I love you. And one last thing. Thank you for that, Tracy, for the love you give me, because it reminds me of something. Sometimes I feel when I sit here and speak and say things that they're heard, but they're never answered. And that I need to have fixed. I do. I take that personal. Thank you for that, Tracy. So I'm asking that if I ask something, if I can get a respond, I get more than feedback, get an email, get something, because I don't get those feedbacks. And I want the public to know that. When I'm standing up here and speaking out, I don't get the feedback I think I deserve, that we deserve, the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. And for our final comment, Jackie, please unmute and go ahead.
Thanks. And I could hear the baby all day long. Thank you for that, Deborah. Thank you for all the hard work that everybody put into this. I know it's a really challenging conversation, and I know that CDSS, you're taking to heart our questions, our concerns, our comments. My wondering is why are there variable allowable indexes for setting the wages? And we all understand, I think we heard this, it just allows for potentially challenging continued inequities in the system regionally. And so would really like to understand that. I know the last work group that we were on, we were talking about living wage, and the gap between BLS and living wage is huge. Again, you see it in the comments here, and the panelists have raised it. So that's just a flag. I know that there are, for example, in education local control funding formula, there are different add-ons. There's a base that considers a number of things and different add-ons that are similar. And the structure just relies on too many variables and inconsistencies that actually, in my mind, really creates more inequities than what we all set out to do.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Jackie, for your comment. And let me start off by first acknowledging that we've heard in this panel several panelists calling out some feedback regarding the use of the BLS. So I want to just make sure that we note that and for different reasons across the different panelists. So I want to make sure we note it. Our charge at hand was to create a cost model based on both the survey as well as the different groups that we've had conversations with, including this group here, to reflect and move us towards a single rate structure. As part of those conversations, compensation was one of the elements that we knew we wanted to include, and we, meaning the big we with all of us here, in regards to as one of the elements itself. But we continue to learn is, like you saw, the different compensation options that with California's single rate will need to take in consideration. And so we brought those then to this group to say these are the ones that are already built into the current model itself as options. How we take that information, going back to what Jackie is alluding to, is through these type of discussions, right? To continue to have those type of discussions in regards to of those options. As you're providing us the feedback and the reasonings of different types, what is ideal for California to utilize. And we think that we want to continue to have open discussions with you and as well as the public in regards to that there. Let me pause and see if there's anything that P5 would like to add that I missed in regards to the model itself and the elements and the compensation and the menus of options.
I think there might be one piece that we could clarify regarding the what was being referred to as one-time expenses in the model. So those, I think that concept is being maybe misinterpreted on how, so the value is put in and assigned to a child that's being served by the program, but then that becomes part of the cost of serving that child annually. So it is not actually applied once, right? Like it's not as if when a child starts in a program, there a payment of $100 follows that child, and then if the child moves and goes to another program, that 100's been used. It actually becomes part of the cost output in the model, and then will be used to inform the rate that's set. So if the slot gets filled 5 times, this is the rate that's paid 5 times for however many children fill a slot includes that annual amount. So just to clarify that, I think the concept of an annual amount was maybe being a little conflated or interpreted as if it was a one-time payment, and that's not the nature of how the cost model works. So just to clarify that we can set that piece aside. I think that's just a little confusion on how cost modeling comes up with an answer to the cost per child.
Thank you, Gina, for that. Turning over to Krista. So this concludes our panel discussion. Again, I know that that was a big topic to be able to capture in less than an hour. So hear that from the participants talking about that. And please know that there is other venues, including written feedback and et cetera, that we do want to hear from you. And we are continuing to utilize that information to continue to bring back to the group. So appreciate that too. Now, in terms of our public comment segment, and now we are at the panel discussion. We are now opening it up for public comment in the chat and live on the screen. We would like to hear from you regarding the timeline overview as well as the elements. For those of you making use of written chat, we ask that you organize your thoughts into one written comment and public comment per session. The same as we would ask if you choose to make an oral comment instead. We want to amplify and take notice as much as the separate voices as possible, which we know that it will go fast. So I will turn it over to Krista to open it up to public comment.
I didn't unmute. Thank you. We will be utilizing the timer during this public comment session in order to maximize the number of members of the public that we're able to hear from at this time. So you will see on the screen the timer being displayed for 1 minute. We will have you unmuted during your 1 minute public comment, and then we will mute at the end of 1 minute. If you have not had a chance to complete your comment at that time, please do use the chat feature to share the rest of your comments, and know that when we are compiling the write-up for this meeting, we are able to join the public comment with what you share in chat to connect your entire thoughts. We do want to give folks a second to compile your thoughts. 1 minute is a really targeted amount of time, and to ask you to please include all of your questions into one comment at this time. And our first public comments will be from Marcella Graves. Marcella, please go ahead and unmute.
Yeah. Yes. Hi, good morning, everyone. I just have a quick question I wanted to ask about the rate increase. Um, I've been having trouble with that because the state didn't give over to CDA that the kids I have, and so I had to go all the way down to the welfare office and get a copy of the kids I have and give it to Lorena from CDA, and she says she has to contact the state and she's gonna find out what's going on. So I just want to know they're having problems with that system. And I filled out the W-9s. I thought when I did the W-9s, everything would be fine, but it's not. And it's unfortunate. And I had to take out my time to leave my job to go do all that today. And it's very stressful. So I don't want to know how the system, designed for us to get reimbursed for the rate increase, because it seemed like there's some glitches in the system. And that's what I have to say. And also, you're talking about transportation.
Thank you so much, Marcella. I invite you to continue your comment in the chat. At this
Krista,
time,
can I have Marcella put her email or send it to me directly so I can follow up with her on her comment too?
yes, Marcella, we will watch for your email information in chat so we can follow up with you. Nikita Houston, please go ahead and unmute. It looks like we may have lost the connection with Nikita Houston. Andrew Avila, please go ahead and unmute.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead, Andrew.
Hello, my name is Andrew Avila on behalf of Early Edge California. First, thank you all for the very important work you've done so far and for sharing documents in the chat. While there are portions that are still TBD, we want to acknowledge and appreciate the support for DLL children in the base rate. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And Nikita, I see your comment. Please go ahead and raise your hand again and I will call on you. I do see your hand raised, so I will get to you after Sarah and Alyssa. Alyssa, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Alyssa Corgan. I'm the Director of Public Policy at Kudango, serving approximately 4,000 families in the Bay Area. We continue to be so appreciative of this work. And we just want to mention that, as we reviewed the progress in the documents, we really want to stress the need to see those elements, base rate elements for center-based programs as soon as possible so that we have time to collect feedback from our center-based directors and our programs to make sure that center-based programs really have their unique needs and considerations accounted for, and that day-to-day reality is accurately reflected. We also wanted to uplift the necessity of including early childhood mental health consultation as an element to account for in the base rate for all program types. It's a really essential part of child health and teacher health and sets up environments to create belonging and a positive classroom experience for every child. So thank you again for all of this work and for your time and consideration today.
Thank you, Alyssa. Sarah Batches, please go ahead. It looks like we may have lost Sarah. Serena Lynn, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much, Serena Lynn. I just wanted to raise up a thank you to Deborah, Mirren, all of CCPU for advocating for the mixed delivery system. I'll put it in the notes as well, but I hear you that this is not a one-sided conversation. It's a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-way conversation, and you're getting a lot of resistance and feedback from state legislators. And thank you for having the mixed delivery system at heart and all early childhood educators in mind when you talk with the state. I think the other is just the BLS, raise up concern, as many other expert panelists have mentioned on here, concern that that's not the true cost of care. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. So I'm not sure why we would focus our efforts and say that BLS is the true cost of care if it doesn't actually reflect it and we're not professionalizing our workforce. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Serena. Nina, please go ahead.
Hello, good morning. My name is Nina Boothie. I'm the Executive Director of Every Child California, and just want to again say my appreciation for all of the hard work that is being put into this effort. It's really wonderful to finally see a grid out there talking about what some of the elements are. However, I would like to emphasize that as soon as we can see those center-based elements, that would be very, very helpful. There are some unique variables for center-based programs, which are very different from family childcare homes, especially when you're looking at private providers who take vouchers versus a Title V direct contracting center. Additionally, I would like to echo the comments made previously about the BLS and that it really is not a good indicator in which to base the cost of care of. So thank you so much. Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Nina. Sarah, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Sarah Bachus. We're concerned with using variable indexes to create a rate that is important to establish as we establish a floor, one which will take multiple years to achieve. We also recommend returning to the livable wage, as that was the consensus. That provides equity and a respectful path for a field that is in grave need and very representative of, by women of color. So those are our comments, and we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Nikita, please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me a second chance. My name is Nikita. I'm a child care provider. On behalf of all child care providers, I just want to say that providers need to be paid an equitable living wage. Our work is important and essential. California runs on child care, and we want the state to ensure that child care providers and family friend and neighbors are properly valued, that our salary take-home pay reflects that value. The state of California needs to respond with urgency, addressing this cost of care now and move forward to implementing new rates in place as soon as possible. Child care providers are struggling now, and the cost of care as it is skyrockets, threatens to prohibit our continued service to children and families in our communities. We can't wait for the new rates to go into effect January 2026. That's not acceptable. The gap between cost of care and current pay needs to be closed now. Implement and fully fund rate care. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. At this time, I don't see any further hands raised for public comment, but want to hold open space in case anyone would like to raise your hand and share verbal comment at this time. Karina, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Karina Hernandez, and on behalf of Catalyst California, thank you all for all of your hard work. We really want to share our appreciation for including dual language learner support as an element of the base rate. We also appreciate the inclusion of family engagement as a quality variable and look forward to sharing our feedback in the future and to learning more about how we can ensure that these elements are robust and support the needs of providers, children, and families across all settings and implementation of the new methodology. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karina. And a reminder that the chat continues to be open for public comment, and thank you panelists for holding your comment at this time. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to share verbal comment? Yvonne, please go ahead.
Hi, hoping my connection is okay right now. Thank you for your time, and thank you to all the panelists who are there today. My name's Yvonne Cottage, and I have been a home-based family and child care educator for almost 20 years now. And I just want to address the urgency of the cost of care crisis. It's an urgent need, and it's not something that can wait any longer. There's a lot of family child care providers that are closing their doors. There's a lot of family child care providers that are open and not receiving any referrals from the subsidy agency, from the agencies either. And I just want to address, there was a comment in the last meeting about the new rates not going into effect until January 2026. And that's not acceptable. Providers cannot wait, families cannot wait. Something needs to be done now. And when
Thank you, Yvonne. Appreciate you sharing your comments and do invite you to use chat to continue. And I believe that will wrap up our public comment period. We can keep the chat open for a couple more minutes, but let me share my screen and I will return us to our slides. Dr.
Thank you,
Jaime
Kristen.
Milam, back to you.
Thank you, and thank you. So thank you everyone for the public comment, and again, noting all the comments that were shared. And now transitioning to our next segment of our conversation. So the infographic that we have in front of us provides a high-level view of the key process milestones associated with the development of the California Alternative Methodology and the cost estimation model. We walked through in detail in last month's meeting. Today, I want to direct your attention to the fourth milestone on the timeline, the July 1st deadline for CDSS to submit necessary information to support the use of a single rate structure, utilizing the alternative methodology to the Federal Administration for Children and Families. I'm now going to hand over the next slide to P5 that will walk us through that submission. So let's go to the next slide.
Thank you, Dr. Lupe. So we're just going to quickly address some of the technical details of that July 1st deadline. So technically, there are two reports that are due by July 1st. The first is the Child Care and Development Fund state plan, right? That's your major plan, and you all have seen other emails and messaging going out about the public share regarding the plan. Part of that is the alternative methodology. The Federal Office of Child Care under ACF has offered states that are engaged in alternative methodology, like California is, the opportunity to request to take flexibilities with their process. And so this offer was made in August of 23, and states that had already gotten the approval to do alternative methodology were eligible to consider whether they wanted to exercise these flexibilities. What the opportunity was is to say that if states had not completed all of the activities of alternative methodology by that July 1st due date, they could put forward the status of their alternative methodology process and then put forward an adjusted timeline. They have to meet a couple conditions in order to get the flexibilities. And so those two conditions are that status update is a significant one. So the July 1st plan that California submits will include a status update on alternative methodology and all of the activities that have been completed, which are a majority of the alternative methodology activities you've all completed, and you've been an active part of them as a provider community. Status will include a timeline for completing the rest of the activities, which are primarily the using of the cost model and then setting rates. So that will be part of what's shared in the status update. The other requirement from the Office of Child Care for California to use these flexibilities is to confirm the current payment rates that California is using to pay providers with CCDF dollars, how those relate to any inflation that has occurred since rates were last set. So when rates were set with the last plan submission, compare that to this point in time regarding inflation. So those two things are going to be put forward with the July 1st plan as California requests to exercise the flexibilities that were offered to states. The other piece of the flexibilities does require that states have a plan to finish the process and set payment rates that shows that they will be done with this by July 1st of 2025. So next July of 2025. We will share a little bit more of the specifics of the details of this submission that's going to go in on July 1st at the next rate and quality panel in May. So you'll see the details of the status update and the inflation details. And I'm going to turn it back to Lupe.
Thank you. And thank you for providing that information. So let's go to the next slide. At the May 8th rate quality advisory meeting, we will be building on the JLMC definitions, what we grouped today, to discuss and take feedback on the base and enhancement rates for center base, acknowledging that I heard the importance of getting the material out ahead of time so that there is time for the public to really review that sector also, and continuing the conversations during that time. So we're taking that note too. We will also be discussing plans for public engagement after May of 2024. And as noted a moment ago, sharing more detail about the information that will be included in the state's July 1st submission to ACF. We are holding open the possibility of a June rate quality advisory panel meeting. It all depends on how far along we are with our May conversation. So want to just keep that as a possibility, but no dates at this point, other than just the recognition that if we need time, that may be an ask we come back with this group with too. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So for that segment, we'll now again turn it over to the panel for this segment. This is an opportunity to share your comments or your feedback in regards to the timeline that we have walked you through, as well as what Gina had walked through in regards to that alternative methodology plan, and then our next meeting itself. And so with that open question, this is an opportunity to share any of that and weigh in on any of these next steps. I will turn it over again to Krista to support us with the discussions.
Thank you. Robin, please go ahead, followed by Eric and Deborah.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the public for their verbal comments as well as what's in the chat. I read them all. My comment is back to the livable wage comment. At the stakeholder, when we were in the stakeholder, whatever that group was called, we came to a decision during a meeting and selected livable wage. And that is in the report. So what I'd like to know is, since you're presenting to us, is this the opportunity to make that change, make that decision, and just not have all those? Because if you recall, like one of the choices in the last in the stakeholder group was based on what people put in the survey. We just took everything out and said livable wage and went from there. So can we just do that today and make that decision, or are we just a panel that's being reported to? In other words, do we get to help make these decisions today? So that when we come to the May meeting and we see the charts for Title V centers and center-based Title 22 or whatever it's going to be on those charts, it's just done. We don't have all these choices.
Yeah, so happy to jump in with a response. So as mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, this group serves as an advisory, right, to the administration. So we are taking then that feedback then back in regards to hearing that you continue to align with that report that was submitted with that first group is what we're hearing. The second piece I want to add too is that we are reporting out based on what was agreed upon with the Joint Labor Management Committee. As we are hearing any feedback or any more comments with this, no decisions will be made today in terms of this meeting. The information that we're taking is continuing to inform future decisions back. So want to just make sure that I say that in regards to any next steps in regards to the May meeting. And then of course, want to just underscore the importance of continuing to lift up, the your comments in regards to where you would like to see this cost model, and that is the intent of these meetings.
Thank you, Lupe. So just for the public's, for the public to hear, this, we're just advising. We don't get to make the decision. That is really important that people hear that. So we've got your back. We're hearing what everybody's saying. We're giving our opinion, but we don't get to make the decision.
Thank you so much, Robin. Eric, you're up next, followed by Deborah and then Dr. Sanchez. Eric, please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Thank you, Robin. I +1 times 12 on yours. The question I have is the timing of the next meeting. So next meeting, which is in May, I think we're going to talk about the same chart for center base, but I heard Jeannie mention that there may be a sneak peek at some of the actual rates that may be part of the submission to the federal government in July. And maybe I misheard, but if I did not mishear, I'm having a little concern that that will also suck up a lot of the air out of the room. So we spent an entire day here talking about the structure for family childcare and exempt providers. May's meeting is going to be a truncated meeting potentially between center-based charts and whatever the new rates are. So there's an inequity there of time to talk about what's included and what's not included in the base rate potentially, just based upon what's going to be part of the agenda. And I apologize if I misheard that. Also to everyone that's listening, based upon the letter that was submitted as part of the submitted to the legislature, it does say that the JLMC and the state agreed to, and forgive me if I'm wrong, the chart, which talks about BLS. So if that's what JLMC agreed to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that is of concern. Whoever's on that negotiating team, that was not the intent. So I'll defer the rest of my time, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Eric. So let's take one thing at a time here. Let's see here. The first thing is hear what you're saying in regards to the next meeting and the agenda itself. So what Gina had walked through was in regards to that California is exercising their flexibilities in regards to the cost of regards to the setting of rates. What that means is that typically in a normal cycle, by the end of the state plan, we would be posting what that looks like to the state plan. As you know, there's like the equal access section. There's 2 sections there that we talk about that, and then we insert that information, and the public is able to weigh in regards to those sections. What's different and unique from this time is that for those states, which California is one of them, that where we are in the middle of going towards in the middle of utilizing an alternative methodology rate, ACF recognizes that that is taking us a bit longer than the traditional market survey for good reasons, which includes these type of robust conversations we're having. In lieu of that, then they ask states to be able to submit, to ask for flexibilities, which we have, to say your state plan, submit what you know up to now, which is what we did and what you saw when you read the state plan portion for the equal access. At the end of rate setting, you will come back not with an amendment, but instead with an input to those sections and be able to fill in that information that you cannot fill in by June 30th. That's different, right? We've never done that before. You either have to submit it, and that is June 30th, and then you submit amendments after that if there's any changes. At this point, ACF, it continues to be an ally on states moving towards the true cost of care, and that is their way of providing that flexibility piece instead. So what you're going to see as far as state plan, you've seen, because it is the progress up to now, and we will not be able to answer those questions in the state plan until we have completed the process, which is this upcoming year. So let me pause and see if Gina wants to add anything more to that in regards to that first statement.
Yep, my apologies all if there was any sense in what I shared that new rates would be shared. It will just reference what providers are currently paid and how that relates to what inflation you've seen as a state. That is what's required by the Office of Child Care and ACF.
Eric, checking to see if I answered your question. Okay, perfect. Turning it over to Krista.
Ms. Deborah Corley-Marzette, please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you again. I just want to say to everyone, you know, that again, in that meeting, we fought to ensure that there were more options, that BLS was one option. Know that CCPU also agrees on a living wage. So I don't want anyone to get it twisted, think anything different. We supported that. The question you really want to ask is why was the state, or why was BLS so essential for the state to use? That's the real question. So I just want to put that out there. I also want to elaborate on what a young lady had mentioned. Her name was Marcella Graves, when she was talking about the monthly payments that are going out to the providers. And those monthly payments that providers will receive until June of 2025, for stage 1, there's been a big problem. And what she is stating and saying is that providers in stage 1 had not yet been paid for the children they had in December or January or February. And now we're in April. What she also stated that she filled out that W-9. Providers are being told by some agencies, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they'll call and contact that third party group. The third party group, you need to fill out the W-9. Providers have filled it out 3 times. They're going by the wayside. All the work that they're doing is going by the wayside, falling in between these cracks that should not exist. Call your agency, call the third party, call the state. No one has the answer. But I found one particular thing out when I called the third party. The third party said, we just got the information from the state for December, and those checks should be going out soon. But yet I get another phone call. Deborah, the third party is telling me to fill out the W-9 for the 3rd time. So Dr. Lupe, I'm asking you, Marcella is one name of many. And this needs to be addressed today for the providers who are still waiting. And then there has to be something implemented to make sure that this doesn't happen each month, and or how this process is going to be exactly done needs to be explained to the providers of California, exactly how this third party payment is going to get those payments out, because it's not happening correctly. It's not happening properly. And providers are sitting on the wayside, waiting and questioning the truth behind all of this. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. We'll be following up.
Thank you, Deborah. Dr. Sanchez, I invite you to unmute, and please go ahead.
Sí, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. I support what Deborah has said in regards to what's happening to the providers, and at the same time, the urgency to assist the costs for services that has to be now, not for the 25th or later on, but it has to be fixed today and start offering the new rates immediately. I think that we are in a crisis and we have to attend to it. And thank you. Thank you to all of the people that's present.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchez. Brandy Jones-Lawrence, please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you. I just want clarity on Eric's and comment. So at our next meeting, are we going to go through charts similar to these about center-based care? I understand that the response was that the rates will not be shared because they will not be determined by the time that the report has to go into the feds. But I'm unclear. So, but we will be talking about the center-based version of this, or are we to assume that this is the same for center-based, or can you get clarity on that, please?
So we will be talking about the center-based version of this for the next meeting and going slide by slide.
Okay. And is there a substantial difference besides the benefits piece or whatever? Like what would be different? What would be a good use of that time?
I'm sorry, I don't have the slides in front of me to be able to give you
No, I
the
know.
differences.
Generally speaking, I mean, you have the elements, program characteristics, all of the things at the top of this. So I'm just asking, like, are things going to look substantially different in terms of the elements that will be included? Because these are the elements that are generally included in the cost model that was already created.
Got it. So yes, so in terms of your differences in terms of the elements, no, they would be the same with the elements itself. And we'll be going slide by slide to discuss the elements with the centers and as the focus, thinking about Title V, thinking about Title 22, and continuing to receive feedback from this group.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Brandy. Robin, please go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, thanks. So I understand that next meet what Brandy said, so I appreciate that. But what I want to know is, will any of the changes be made based on feedback today? Like, for example, the living wage issue. So can we just be done with that, or are we going to spend all of next meeting talking about that not being the way we all would like it to look? Were center-based are not part of the CCPU or GLMA, so I don't know if, can we just hear now whether or not our feedback that you're getting today is going to possibly change those slides that are going to be presented next month?
So the slides will be different in terms of elements being the same. However, some of the selection points, because it's center-based, will have possibly different languages, right? In regards to a center has for instance, more children that they serve and et cetera. In terms of decision points for today's meeting or for the advisory meetings that this group has chartered to do, there's no decision points made in these meetings. This is information that we take back and continue to hear from you and in other spaces to be able to inform then the cost model moving forward.
Thank you. And we have time for one more panelist comment before we move to public comments. So Donna, please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to just thank Deborah and the folks who participated in the JLMC. I think her comment that, they are having to negotiate with other parties that are not on this call, and that they did not bring the concept of the Bureau of Labor Statistics to the table, that came from someone else. So I do have some concerns that, one, we're putting our family child care providers who are on the JLMC in between the state and the rest of the field, and leaving them to be responsible when they don't have total control. It seems tough. And I also am just really concerned, I'll reiterate what I put in the chat, that using the current labor statistics where we know that the wages are wholly inadequate artificially holds down the base. And it is a cost-saving approach, not a visionary growth approach. And I'm just really concerned that this emerged in here, and just also really appreciate all the time that the providers have put into the JLMC, and want to make sure they understand that we know that it's a negotiation, and you don't always get what you want. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
So we are now ready to open for public comment. As with the previous public comment period, we will display the timer live on screen. And Dr. Lupe, would you like to share the invitation for this public comment period?
Yes, happy to do it. And again, thank you to the panel for the continuous conversation that we're having in regards to this important step for California. We are now opening it for public comment in the chat and live on screen. We have, again, limited to 1 minute. We would like to hear from you regarding the next steps in the alternate methodology process. And again, for those of you making use of the written chat, please organize your thoughts into one written comment rather than a series of comments and responses, so that when we create space for as many separate voices as possible. Turn it over to Krista.
Thank you. And at this time, I don't see any hand raised. Okay, great. Rebecca, please unmute and go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. I'm a family childcare provider for more than 10 years, previous credentialed teacher. What plan for the future rate increases are being proposed in this will they be built in? The 9-person fast food panel raises wages each year, inflation or 3%, whichever is lower. So how will these plans for childcare rate increases be built in for the future, so that we don't have to do this whole panel discussion again?
So typically during the public panel, I don't weigh in, but I do want to in this case, just to clarify. So CCDF funding requires us to do either an alternative methodology or a market survey, or a market survey with an alternative methodology every several years. And so therefore, it is then going to be implemented, as we mentioned, or we're going to be wrapping up this, and then we're going to be getting ready for the next one, in a sense, because it is part of our federally funded mandate to be able to make sure that we are having these type of surveys to continue to track the cost of care.
Thank you. And our next member of the public, Serena, please unmute and go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Serena Lynn. I just wanted to raise up that if the BLS is going to be used, I would hope that we can kind of see what the difference, maybe it might be helpful to the group to see what difference it would make between the current rate and the BLS rate. Like if there actually is a marked difference that would raise the professional wages, or at least move closer to it. And then my other comment would be, if we are going to use the BLS, then I don't think that we should tout it as the true cost of care, because it's not. So if we're going to go with BLS, then this report, other reports in the state should be accurate and say that it's a compromise that was reached, but it's still not the true cost of care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Serena. And again, the chat is open for those who would like to contribute comments via chat. And we do have time for additional verbal comment. If you would like to make a verbal comment, please indicate by raising your hands. Nikita, please unmute and go ahead. Nikita, if you're able to unmute, you can please go ahead.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So just wanted to say again that, sorry. that we have been most successful when we stood together with all providers, ECE allies, and parents. Cost of care, particularly as the state believes is facing a deficit. It's like many of the previous fights we've faced in terms of being challenging. And to be successful, we need to organize all supporters that we believe will support our values and goals. And I just want to say thank you to the panel, and thank you to all those who are attending, providers and organizations for just coming together and making sure that providers are treated fairly and are provided an equitable living wage. We need it. It's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. Opportunity for additional verbal public comment. Please indicate that you would like to speak by using the raise hand feature. And we do see quite a few comments coming in on chat. Thank you for that feedback. Regina, please unmute and go ahead. Regina, if you're able to unmute yourself, you can go ahead.
Thought I was unmuted. I thought I was unmuted. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, great. Regina Hamilton, San Bernardino County. I started this, and he wants to tell you too. I'm working, so I did miss some things. I have a couple of babies. So first of all, I want to say thanks for everyone being here today. Deb, I appreciate you speaking out, speaking up. And I'm sure you've heard it before. I just want to put my input that I don't know any employer that has not looked at their people and said, we don't get a raise. We have to fight to get a raise since 2017, 2018, that there's something different going on. So, and the fight is so real. I've said in the supposedly joint committee, where the fight is real. And I feel like our providers, and that's another one.
Thank you so much, Regina. I do invite you to continue your comments in the chat, honoring our 1 minute limit during the public comment period for this meeting. And want to open the floor for additional public comment, if any. Serena, please unmute and go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize. I already spoke, but I think I would be remiss in saying I'm a little bit disappointed and a little bit heartbroken for the field, for all of this work to come through. And if it is really not going to be the living wage and the true cost of care. It's hard to hear, and I understand that these are background discussions and negotiations with the state, but as we see other programs, even someone mentioned the fast food workers getting $20 an hour and setting that. Now I realize they can raise their prices, but it's just really frustrating and heartbreaking. And I'm sure other members of this committee, as an advisory member, as an advisory committee, feel the same way. And I'm just so hopeful that the CCPU can have further discussions with the agencies that it really needs to be the true cost of care. Thank you so much for letting me speak again. I really, really appreciate it. Oops.
Thank you, Serena. And Regina, please go ahead. Regina, looks like you just need to.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes.
Okay. Yes. True cost of care. Thank you. And that's where I was getting to. I wanted to share an experience with everyone that's on here. I had help, but because I couldn't pay my help, because I have to pay my help minimum wage. So I couldn't pay my help minimum wage and run the the childcare. This is our future. And I'm asking that the state and everybody on here, let's not just respect the providers, let's respect our upcoming children. And it's mostly in the Black and brown community, if I may say, that the problem is happening. So I know I'm going to run out again, but the point is I feel that we're not being respected, is why we're fighting to get not fair, livable wages. We need livable wages. Everybody's at the gas pump. Everybody's eating eggs.
Thank you so much, Regina. And again, I invite you to continue your comment in chat. At this time, I'd like to call upon Elizabeth. Please go ahead and unmute.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Lizarraga, and I'm being a childcare provider in the city of North Long Beach for almost 6 years now. And I'm here asking urgency of addressing the cost of care crisis. Now we're moving to new rates, and we would like to see the movement as soon as possible. We know it takes time to address everything, but for providers and families that they need the childcare, I have seen a lot of families that they have come to see or look for childcare, and they apply and they being denied for their health for their childcare, and we need to motivate the state for help us all, the providers in California. Thank you very much. I see my time is running. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And at this time, I would like to invite any members of the public who have not yet had a chance to comment to go ahead and raise your hand if you would like to share verbal comment. And of course, the chat continues to be open for public comment. Zoila Toma, please go ahead and unmute.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Zoila Carolina Toma from Lakewood. I've been a family childcare educator for 30 years. I am here because, in this 13 years, I've been part of the movement and the change and all that. I just want to make sure when the negotiation team is working with the state, to ensure that we actually never, ever fall behind 5 to 7 years. It's unfair for us as educators. It's unfair for the families that we work. This is unacceptable. We need to ensure that we provide quality care, that we sustain our business and also our families. From now on, this cannot happen. We cannot be begging for sustainable wages when it's a right for our children, for our future, for it's the decent thing to do for our future generation. To provide quality care is their right.
Thank you so much, Zoila, and do invite you to continue your comment in chat. And we have time for a couple additional verbal comments. If there are any members of the public who have not yet had a chance to share verbally, I invite you to raise your hands if you would like to be identified. Raina, please unmute and go ahead. Raina, we've enabled your comment. If you're able to unmute yourself, you can please go ahead. Looks like Raina may have technical difficulties. We'll hold the floor open for a little bit more to see if you're able. You should have access to make your comment at this time. And again, we have 2 more minutes, so any further public comment from those who have not had a chance to share, you are invited to do so at this time.
Can you hear me now, hon?
Yes, Raina, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Quickly, I just wanted to let you know I have been a daycare provider for the last 31 years. Yeah, we have not gotten a raise in many, many years. I think that's unfair. I've been plugged in with a lot of unions and going to meetings and trying to figure out what we can do to get a raise. I think it's unfair. So it's only right for them to help us out. We've been doing our job. Everybody else is getting a raise, $20, you know, at fast foods, while we're still in the same spot where we've been for the last years. So with that being said, I don't know what else we can do to get to them to have them.
Raina, it looks like we may have lost you there. If you're able to unmute, you can go ahead, or if not, please add your comment to the chat. And as this is the last public comment period, we will be leaving the chat open for the remainder of the meeting. And seeing no further hands raised from the public, I will bring us back to
Thank you, Krista. I think somehow you got cut off, but thank you for facilitating the public comment, and want to continue to thank the public for providing us the feedback that, as well as we'll keep the chat open for a few minutes longer to continue to collect more information from the public. That said, if we're able to show the PowerPoint, great. If not, then no worries at all. As we're getting down to our last 2 final slides. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so perfect. So again, want to thank everyone for attending today's meeting. Our next regularly bi-monthly scheduled, or actually our next Rate and Quality Advisory Panel meeting will be held on May 9th from 1 to 3. And so look forward to continuing the conversation then. And then let's go to the next slide. As a reminder, all materials for the panel meeting are available on the CDSS Rate Reform website, which also lists the dates and the times for all future scheduled panel meetings. You can join the CCDD listserv to get email updates, and we have that information not only on the slide, but we'll also make it available in the chat. We thank you again for joining us today. We will keep the chat open for 5 minutes to continuing to collect any further public comments, and appreciate everyone being able to join us during this time. And I apologize, I said the date wrong, and thank you so much, Dion, for sending me a note here. Our next meeting is May 8th from 1 to 3 p.m. I'm glad we were able to catch that before we concluded this meeting. So May 8th from 1 to 3 p.m. So appreciate everyone's time together. And that concludes, like you mentioned, we'll leave the chat open and appreciate everyone's time. Thank you, everyone. And of course, thank you to our panelists too.
Dr. Lupe, am I able to say something real quick, please?
Deborah, I think I heard you. I'm sorry, I have technology issues, but yes, if you want to just say that in the next couple of minutes as we are closing out.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lupe. I just want to say thank you to California Family Daycare Providers, Home-Based Educators, for being on this call and being on all the other calls, for uniting, coming together and speaking out. But this is truly how we make changes. As we unite together, come together, speak out, and show our unity. It really makes a difference. So I want to say thank you to California's finest, home-based educators. Thank you so much for everything that you do for the families we serve, as well as for the economy that we support, Californians. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Lupe.
Thank you too. Thank you, everybody.
This concludes this meeting. As noted, we will keep the chat open until 11:50. So please do continue to offer public comments via chat. And we look forward to seeing you all again in May. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.